Hey everyone! As it is tradition in this channel, after finishing the game, let's check the story, gameplay, graphics and music. In this time around, from a game that began a whole messy crusade. It's been 20 years and we haven't seen an ending, but it is close. I still find it funny that when I talk about some games that needed remakes, little after this thing was announced. In any case, for those who also live away from the media, this is a remake from Sora no Kiseki, or also named Trails in the Sky. It is a quite faithful remake with few changes here and there, but let's not ramble here, and let's dive into the story. The first thing we get to see in this game is how Keishu's sprite, or Estell's father, arrives home with an injured boy, which was a little bit of a disappointment for Estell, considering she wanted a new pair of sneakers or something new for her stuff. In due time, this boy regains consciousness, and he starts to question why he was brought here, detail that we will get to know later. However, our little fella was a bit noisy for Estell's taste, and what better way than drop-kicking a person who doesn't listen, right? This is how our duo gets to know each other, duo who continue training to become into bracers in the future. Yeah, there is a little time skip, where we will follow this pair into the final practical test to get the bracer recognition. Good luck for Estell considering that she is bad with written exams. And that is pretty much how both of them become into junior bracers. Little after, Keishu's bride has to embark on a journey, leaving Estell and Jopshua with the task to help with some quest while he's away. So, in general, what can I say about this story? We are going to follow our duo through the liberal kingdom, having multiple objectives at hand, get enough recognition to become into senior bracers, and look after their father, as there are some dire news later. But that is just the surface, because as we unravel the story, we will get to know that something else is brewing in the shadows, and while there are details here and there, some things will simply pass over your head. But don't worry, few are left in the inkwell. Whatever the case, here you will get to know an interesting group of characters, gang that is quite hilarious, and that is something I love so much about this game, because there are plenty of silly moments. For the most part, there was a grin in my face because of how some scenes were animated, so also expect plenty of good laughs. While also watching how Estell and Jopshua grow, how there is a natural evolution with what they are learning, as well as their relationship. In comparison to other stories where they try to develop these kinds of ideas, oftentimes they feel as if forced by the power of the script. And sure, there are moments where this may feel a bit cliché. Nonetheless, the way in which they start to progress is also quite good. Perhaps a bit cringy, hilarious, and embarrassing, but good. In general, it is a fascinating story, but maybe my only complaint comes with the localization. Yeah, some of you hear me say something quite similar in every effing review of this nature, but what can I say? There are multiple lines that simply add way too many extra words, that in all honesty are not necessary. It even feels out of place, considering that there are a good chunk of them where they say one thing and what's written is way off. And while it can be passed if you get some Japanese, chances are that you will look at the subtitles like, what? Kinda constantly. Maybe that is more on my side, considering that I like to listen to the original audios. I will give it a 9. It is a beautiful story filled with plenty of marvelous details, even with some of the chats you have with random NPCs here and there. Gameplay-wise, Trails in the Sky the First takes elements from across the series. The most recent addition is with action fights in the overworld, similarly as Trails Through Daybreak, so you can beat the enemies a bit and then jump into the classic turn-based system. But before diving into specifics, what is my general feeling about the difficulty? I began the game in normal, and moved forward with what was given to me as I advanced. In general, I left plenty of enemies alive, but it was a good idea to begin some combats with tough enemies, considering they are the ones that give the best drops and experience. Through the whole game I didn't use special items to increase my stats, and for the most part I didn't bother with the specific customizations, so I didn't try to get into speed tanking or something fancy as in other entries. There were a couple of retrays, but never to a point where I felt stuck or having to turn back. So, in my humble opinion, it is a 4 chiles jalapeños out of 10. In comparison to other entries of this series, there are multiple ways in which you can improve your character, and you don't have to crack your head, so it turns into something rather simple. Now in this game you will be running here and there, but don't worry that much, it is within open areas, but the adventure is linear. However, it is important to explore a bit, cause that way you will find plenty of treasures, some of them triggering combats but also leaving goodies behind, so I recommend to check them, because there you will find the special enemies to fill the bestiary, in case you want to do that. Aside from that, here we will follow a traditional JRPG formula. You will move from town to town, doing some quests here and there with different objectives and gathering better and better things. While the quests are an important thing about the story, I prefer if you guys find them entertaining or skippable. Personally, I will say that plenty of them can be done while advancing, but it is also fair to recognize that some others feel a bit trivial. Not too much in line with what was shared in the bit about quest, but considering the topic of the game and that bracers help for the most part, some trivial tasks here and there do not feel out of place. What's good is that the rewards as you advance are worth it. Now, within battles, it is all about positioning and using normal attacks, arts, crafts, special moves and things like that. It is kinda straightforward. It definitely improved from the original entry, considering that it was much more basic. The deal is that most moves add or reduce a kind of delay. In the left side you will see who is next, and if the move at hand will add a delay. The only thing I will suggest here is do not abuse of certain kinds of moves, because they will slow you down quite good. So try to be strategic with how you're stacking buffs, debuffs and CP, which is used for the special moves that will save you plenty of times. Aside from that, the idea is to get a decent grasp of the flow of the battle, the number of moves you will need to stun the enemy, and once they are stunned, abuse a bit from special moves, without going overboard, cause some enemies can enter into special states that may burn through your team. As for the customization, each character can set different equipment, where accessories are the ones that will back you up in plenty of scenarios, as they usually add resistances to insta-kills, debuffs and stuff like that. As for the quartz, just try to keep in mind what kind of character you want to make, and set things to lead the character into that direction, and same way with the attributes you want to have. In general, there is no real need to worry about, but if you want to try harder difficulties, this is where things will matter more and more, so always try to keep in mind a decent strategy with your party members. And also cook. Every time you find a new recipe, cook that recipe. If it goes well, you are going to have an extra bonus in stats. So, cook a lot. In general, considering some of the basic ideas, improvements with added mechanics and so on, I will say its gameplay is an 8.5. It is quite enjoyable, filled with interesting fights and challenges. In the graphics, I check glitches, aesthetics, performance, and other visual ideas, where the only glitch I had was against a mob. In one of the late areas, for some reason, it appeared inside a wall, and I was there trying to land some hits, but it didn't work, until it pretty much disappeared inside the wall. It was weird to see. Aside from this, there were no further problems. Now, it is quite refreshing to see this game in such way, and don't get me wrong, the original aesthetic is quite charming. I love it too, cause plenty of animations were kinda funny to see with those basic executions, but looking at the 3D models is really good. It radically changes how you get to see the world in general. Few loading screens, the cohesive feeling while moving, the silly animations the characters have while talking about dumb things, or how they react in different scenarios. Yes, there are also silly animations, for example, while shooting at the enemy. For some reason they made it look quite fancy with a double wing. And this is not the only case. It is like, yeah, we need to make the characters look good while doing this. I mean, who doesn't pose after shooting, right? And yes, because of the nature of the animations, there will be moments where these will turn hilarious as heck. Or at least that was my experience with the white monkeys. A friend of mine wanted to check this game while I was playing, so we were chatting while I was in this fight. Here we saw this menacing move, like Jesus Chrysler, this is it. Joshua is done. Just to see a miss at the end. We were laughing like there was no tomorrow. So these 3D animations definitely add a lot of life to the game. Now I took my time to check multiple things. I patiently saw each interaction, conversation, movement and so on. Well, what can I say? It is not perfect. If you pay attention to most of things, there will be points where you will catch little details. For example, here Estelle doesn't hold her staff, and while it looks off, in all honesty, I don't think it is that big of a deal. While normally playing, there will pass some of these things, but most of them will pass under your radar, so no biggies. Where I'm not so forgiving is regarding the enemy design. There were technical limitations, yes. If we look at the original models, they were okay, but here you will notice how ugly some of these enemies are, plus the classic repainted scene. Here the question may be, will it be good to slightly modify the enemies to improve them? Or, since it is a remake, is it right to keep the ideas as close as possible to the originals? I don't know, that is something I was thinking while looking at the cities, animations, the scenes, and of course enemies too. To which extent is it right to tweak things, or that is another kind of sin within remakes? In any case, considering that and some other stuff I prefer to leave misunderstood, I will give it another 8.5. And last but not least, the music. The soundtrack of this game was composed by Hayato, Wataru, Takahide, Maiko, and Yukihiro, aka the Falcom sound team, or at least that was for the original soundtrack, cause I hope I am not the only one getting slightly different tones to the ones I remember. Minimum changes if that is truly the case, but for the most part keeping the same cool ideas. Now, while playing the PSP version, of course it works quite well. However, here is where maybe nostalgia doesn't go that well with me. I played a few parts with the original audio, but for some reason it felt slightly out of place. Fortunately, there is an option to change for a new arrangement, which on the other hand felt better for this new setting, or aesthetic at the very least. So through the whole game I played with that particular version, and it was also of my liking. Of course, this is a personal opinion, but I prefer when remakes and stuff like that throw some rearranges like this one, but having the chance to go back to the originals if they are not of your liking. And to me this remake was like re-experiencing a journey I already knew. Sure, details and stuff like that are different, but I didn't feel nostalgic, but happy to see another face of the same coin. And the same idea goes for its soundtrack. Every time I get to listen to those known tracks, there was a grin in my face, because it is a lovely soundtrack with so many beautiful executions, going from some of the most peaceful ones simulating a walk in a meadow, to the ones where you have that difficult challenge, and going through a wide variety of styles. In general, it is a small OST, going for around 2 hours, but it delivers quite well. I will give it a 9. At the end of the day, it is another of those soundtracks I listen from time to time. Trails in the Sky, the first final score, is an 8.7. I do recommend it. It is a really good game, worth checking out, and of course, the best starting point to dive into other trails, considering you will see plenty of these characters appear left and right as the story unfolds. With this, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.